Welcome to part 3, the trial of confusion. Here we continue our framework towards Eden. We've gone through the technological apotheosis, which is like that we are building or becoming gods and demigods through technology. And then we talked about myth as memories, where a lot of the stories seems to describe a time that we were gods or demigods, and that we have declined. And if that's the case, then we can use those myths to find and reverse the story and find a blueprint on how to return to Eden. So now we're going to talk about Babel and start the journey back to Eden. Babel. Was it our last attempt to try to reclaim paradise? Universal language, Babel, confusion. That's the title in Genesis 11, where this story is taken from. And Babel, it means confusion. And the gist of the story is that they're trying to build a tower that reaches the heavens. And they want to do it in order to make a name for themselves and avoid being scattered across the globe that God previously had commanded them to. And they used baked bricks and tar as glue for construction. So was Babel the first singularity, or maybe the latest singularity attempt? Come, let us build a city for ourselves, and a tower whose top will reach into the heavens, and let's make a name for ourselves, so that we will not be scattered and dispersed over the surface of the entire earth. Well, that's the reason why they built it. They want to build a name for themselves, and this ties back into what we will talk about when it comes to the trial of power and the pre-flood era, because the Nephilim, or the giants, the heroes of old, are also known as men of renown. So you can see they want to become men of renown. And then God says, behold, they are one people, and they all have the same language. Now no evil thing they imagine will be impossible for them. So in our framework, it becomes very useful to view this story as a singularity event and where we are now. It's an age of confusion, really. And Babel symbolizes an age of intelligence unbound. And here, actually, it's almost a little bit better than today, because humanity is unified in both speech, in language, and intent, right? So this becomes a story where they try to reclaim paradise, or reclaim the technology of the pre-flood era, or what we can say, the accumulation of godlike power, which fits into the technological apotheosis thesis that we have. And the first sign of this is the universal language. And the first sign is the universal language. So it says the whole world had one language and a common speech. Now this is weird, because why would you say speech or language? They had one language and another language. You don't. I don't know if you know what this is, but this is a Babel fish, and it's from the Hitchhiker's Guide Through the Galaxy. It's a fish that you put in your ear, and then it instantly translates everything around you. If you think about it, we're kind of there today, right? We can have Google translate everything, or ChatGPT, or whatever, so you can talk to someone that in your own language. But if we translate language into code and mathematics, we have a universal language. And then they have a common speech. And speech would then mean like English, Spanish, Chinese. But we also kind of have a common speech, and especially in English, that connects the entire globe, more or less. The second sign is that it's kind of a unified world. It's a globalization. It's a global civilization. Because the whole world, not just one place, but the whole world had one language and a common speech. And God says, behold, they are one people, right? So So this hints at the global civilization. And since God don't tend to, they don't tend to come down and physically scatter people, it's more likely that they wanted to keep in touch with each other and be unified with each other through communication. And so the Tower of Babel seems like more like a global scientific project. So they combined an intent of building this tower. And we have a similar project today, like CERN. That's why this time seems a lot like our time. The third sign is bricks. Come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly. So they build a tower with bricks and tar, and it kind of symbolizes a disconnect from the natural world. Bricks are kind of not natural, like they are artificial technology. So it's very clear that they're not building it through natural means, because stone would be like natural. So when you build with stone, you build with the natural world. And once you bake your own bricks, you are building an artificial world. So the lesson here is, God says, now no evil thing they imagine will be impossible for them. So, but evil, like why would they create evil? They would not create the Tower of Sauron, would they? Not intentionally. And I think this will tie back to the trial of good and evil when we hit the Eden material. But it's more that they don't understand the evil they are creating or giving birth to through their creations, and they're not taking consequences of that. So as a punishment, God confuses and scatters them. And I think the Bible, if you look at the Bible and then you translate God into nature, right? So then the nature of things, the natural forces, the Bible makes a lot more sense in terms of the punishments, that like nature ran its own course, and that's why you got punished. So then the nature of things, meaning basically their technology failed. It failed them. And the reason for this is that it was built on artificial reasoning and not natural reason. And by natural reason, I mean it wasn't part of natural law, right? It wasn't part of the natural order. It deviated too much away from the nature of reality. So, and they were building it with narrative, right? So they build it to make a name for themselves. They build it out of fear, and they build it to not be scattered. So they don't build it to connect with God. They don't build it to bring heaven on earth. They build it for themselves, and they build it through narrative, and a narrative of how things should be, because they themselves wanted to become gods. Since we, this framework, already have been gods, there's nothing wrong with becoming gods, but you need to become gods by natural means, right? And they were building, not understanding really the end output of their own logic, or the end output of their own axioms, like the building blocks of reason. If we connect this to AI, then bricks can be translated to lines of codes or maybe modules, and then the tar is the system that binds it all together, right? So just imagine a confused AI, right? So I will give you two scenarios. You connect everything to AI, and then we give it an objective. And while it tries to achieve that objective, it just crashes everything. It crashes everything. It destroys the entire digital world and a huge chunk of the real world as well, because a lot of our processes are run by digital means, right? So imagine we lose all our digital powers at once. And I believe that's what happened in the Tower of Babel, and that's what it hints at. So the world will be pretty confused at that point. But there are also another scenario which is kind of worse. Imagine we create a self-aware super intelligence, right? And then it turns out to be mad or crazy. So you think you create vision, and pardon my Marvel reference, but I think that makes sense in it makes things a little bit more tangible. But you end up with Ultron, hellbent on destroying the world. So the lessons here are really, if you build out of confusion, meaning without understanding the outcomes of your own logic, and run the system to its end without knowing where it ends, disaster will follow. And that's the lesson. So what's the trial then? What's the trial of the combination? What can we bring out of this? Well, it's to invent with comprehension. It's the trial of comprehension. It's the opposite of confusion. If you comprehend it, you're not confused. And what that means is that you are able to see the hidden drivers beneath the tools, the systems and the decisions, and understand what they eventually lead to, and create a sustainable architecture of reason that we can call truth. So what now? Where do we go from here? How do we overcome the trial of confusion? Well, I will tell you in part 2 of part 3. And then we will go into the juicy stuff. We will talk about truth and why it matters. And we will talk about a strange inversion in how we accumulate knowledge, because it's kind of reverse. And we will also make a case of why science is dead and how we killed it. We will talk more about the logic of things. We will also talk about the principle of activation, and I will try to get you to go from a 2D thinking into a 3D thinking, so that you can develop an embodied understanding. So this concludes part 3 for now, but I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this exciting. Now, if you want to be the hero of the story, you can support this work by either subscribing to the channel, engaging, sharing it with a friend, comment in the section below, or you can buy me a coffee or a beer, maybe a beer, by scanning the QR code or visiting this link down below. Thank you for watching. I see you in the next one.